New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents a weekly exploration of various spiritual practices with renowned spiritual authors, coaches, teachers, and Dr. Tracy Brown, RScP.
And now, here's Tracy.
I think that's going to make me laugh every week. And now here's Tracy. And I am very clear that I am saying hello to all of you. And you're here too. I am not by myself. And I'm so glad for that. My name is Tracy Brown, and this is Poetry, Prayer, and Practice. And it is all about us taking an intentional look at the spiritual practices that we use and how they help us live the lives we want to live. I especially will be focusing on how poetry is a spiritual practice, or how poetry can inspire spiritual practice or spiritual deepening, prayer, and how we use it to create and to manifest, and then all other spiritual practices. We'll be sprinkling them in here and there, week by week, just depending on what's going on or what questions people ask or what you say you want to hear more of. In today's show, I'm really going to drill down on prayer. Not the academic approach to prayer, but we are going to have an opportunity to explore and to think about, what do I know about prayer? And even more importantly, how do I use prayer in my own life? What's really interesting for me is that maybe just like some of you, I learned to pray as a very small child. And I don't remember, I guess even before I said prayers or was taught to memorize prayers, I was exposed to prayer. My family prayed before any and every meal, and blessed the food. And I went to church just about every Sunday in my growing up experience. And so I was exposed to people praying from the pulpit or the platform. I was exposed to prayer at classes and different meetings at the church. And so there is a part of me that doesn't remember learning about prayer. It was just so integrated into my life in so many different ways. And I can think back to learning, now I lay me down to sleep, right? As a prayer before bed. And that's really kind of the first prayer I learned even though when I listen to or think about those words now, or real actually by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was thinking about those words and why would you teach a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a young child that, yeah, God, take my soul, if I don't wake up. But that's a whole nother story. The foundation of having prayer be in my life and the foundation of learning to pray has always stayed with me. And partially as a result of that, one of my favorite quotations about prayer is this one. Is prayer your steering wheel or your spare tire? Now, there are a lot of quotes from Corrie ten Boom that I just love. This might be my favorite one. It's definitely in my top 5 favorite quotes about prayer. Is prayer your steering wheel or your spare tire? I mean, think about that. And even, put in the comments, what's your first reaction? Prayer's my steering wheel. It helps guide me, or I use it to guide the direction that I'm going, right? Prayer's that steering wheel. I use it to point me in the direction. If I need to turn to the right, I let prayer, guide my movement, my thought, my action. Or is it the spare tire that, yeah, I know about prayer. It's kind of in the trunk. And if the road gets rocky or I drive through a construction zone and there's a nail in my tire and I'm not driving so smooth, and I stop, pull over, kind of stop everything I'm doing and go open the trunk of the car and pull out the spare tire. Is that how you use prayer? So I love this quote because it always reminds me that my intention is for prayer to be the steering wheel of the movement of my life. And obviously that's a great intention. It's not always the easiest, but I believe at this stage of my life, because of habit, because of habitual use of prayer to provide guidance about what I'm doing and the decisions that I'm making, then of course what happens is, just like in driving your car, you don't even think about it. I don't really consciously think about it. I just realize that I'm using prayer. I'm using prayer as I set my intention. I am deepening my own commitment to what I want to achieve by the use of prayer. I integrate prayer into my daily practice. What about you? Are you using prayer as your steering wheel or as your spare tire? And we can't really go deep talking about prayer without paying attention to what we are doing when we are praying. So I grew up at a young age thinking that my prayers were, now, I'm going to say it this way, but I have to say as a kid, I didn't really consciously think of it this way, but it's kind of like prayer was taught to me in a way that made it seem as if I was either negotiating with God or begging is a strong word. but asking God for something, to give me something, to provide something. If it was a negotiation, it was, I am praying for certain things to be delivered to me, the giving, and I will do this, right? I will follow this. I will do this that I've been commanded to do. It's like an exchange. I give you my obedience or my whatever, my thoughts, my desires, and then you, God, will give me what I'm asking for, if I've been good, if I've done certain things. And I can remember the first time that I began to realize that actually what Mother Teresa said was that prayer is not asking. Prayer is putting oneself in the hands of God at his disposition and listening to his voice in the depth of our hearts. Prayer is not asking, begging, beseeching. Prayer is delivering oneself into the infinite nature of the divine, knowing that the wisdom and the knowledge and the love will be spoken or delivered through intuition, through insight, right? So prayer is not asking or not just asking. It is really understanding oneness, that I am one with that which created me. And in this prayer, I am affirming and reminding myself that the wisdom, the love, the joy, the beauty, the peace, right? The integrity of the relationship that I have with spirit, with the universe, with God, by whatever name it resonates with you, that it's that affirmation of the oneness. And the Kierkegaard quote that I also really got a lot of insight from was this one: the function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. I just love that. That reminder that God is consistent, the eternal expression of infinite intelligence and boundless love is always present. I may be out of alignment with that, and prayer returns me to the center of this intelligence, this universal life. And it changes my nature. It reminds me of who I am. And some people would say, and whose I am. And then I am reminded that all things are possible, that I need to be clear about where I'm going and what I desire to experience and be moving in that direction. But I'm not doing it alone. In fact, I wouldn't be able to do it at all if I were not doing it in alignment with universal principle, if I were not doing it in alignment with the way that spiritual law operates. And so when I can remember that prayer is not about changing God, but instead, prayer is a communication, right? Um, Billy Graham, the wisdom is everywhere. So I can find and listen to the universal truth from all faith systems, all spiritual belief systems, because beneath the surface of dogma or rituals, or you must do things this way or that way, there is a universal, consistency in the capital T truth. So when Billy Graham says that prayer is simply a two-way conversation between you and God, I say yes. I say, yeah, I get that. That is the truth. Prayer is a two-way conversation between you and God. Prayer is a two-way conversation between me and the God of my understanding. And when I can remember that, it's a whole different kind of conversation, right? It is not a conversation of strength versus weakness. It is no longer a conversation of judgment and appeasement. It is a conversation of, I have been created in the spiritual image and likeness of the creator of all of life. And because of that, this is how I see my life unfolding. This is what I am here to do. This is how I have been made to show up. And when you can remember that, oh my goodness, right? It is so fabulous, so beautiful. And prayer becomes this sacred communion, with the spiritual flow of all life. It is a powerful instrument. It is a meaningful practice. It is not, as Mahatma Gandhi said in a quote, it's not some idle amusement. Right. Oh, and what's funny is, well, let me share the Gandhi quote, and then you'll understand the comment that I'm going to make. Prayer is not an old woman's idle amusement. Properly understood and applied, it is the most potent instrument of action. The most potent instrument of action. That's what prayer is. But I do laugh every time I come across this quote, because it did seem, when I was maybe in elementary school, it did seem like it was the old women, like whatever old meant, or, as a 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old, like, look at the old women, right? They pray all the time. Now, when I think back, I prayed every day because it was the habit. It was built into the way that my family lived and what I had been taught. But as a kid, my prayers were pretty short and pretty simple. And so hearing, older women in the church community praying, and it seemed like they just went on and on and on. It's kind of like, oh, that's what old folks do, or especially old women. And they're just doing it because they don't have anything else to do, or like, get to the point. All of the things that now I am one of those older women, and I am sure there are people who are younger who are like, Tracy, I love her prayers, but if she could just like make them half as long. The reality, though, of going beneath the surface and realizing, oh, prayer is not an amusement. It's not just an activity when you don't have anything else to do. It has the ability to be one of the most potent instruments or tools or resources that demonstrate our belief, that closes the gap between where we are now and where we aspire to be. Prayer is an action that we can take in order to shift condition, shift belief. Prayer is the powerful action that we can take to change our own minds about what is happening, what is possible, and what is intended to be. And so there are no small prayers and large prayers. Every prayer is a powerful movement of thought and consciousness, every prayer. And there's no such thing as, oh, yeah, I know that's not going so well, but it's not that important. It's not important enough for me to ask you for prayer. I have had people say that to me as a spiritual coach, as a practitioner of science of mind. I have had people literally say to me, if I ask them, what would you like me to be praying for you or with you? And they will say, oh, well, yeah, there's some things going on, but they're not important. They're not that important. I'm like, everything in my life is an important and integral part of creating the life I experience and the life I am building. So if you believe that as well, then you understand a couple of things. One, you understand that William James' quote of the sovereign cure for worry is prayer. Anything that you find yourself worrying about, even if it's small, then the cure for that worry is prayer. Coming back to who you are and what is real, capital R real, what is spiritually real. So if you're worrying about anything, even, I'm in my car, I'm going roller skating, right? This is not like I'm going to, some major appointment or presentation where there's thousands of dollars connected to me being on time and showing up. I'm in my car. I'm driving to the skating rink. And I find myself worrying, like, oh my goodness, it's silly. I'm worried that I'm running late and I'm going to miss 15 or 20 minutes of the music that I prefer to hear, that is usually played at the beginning of the skating session before it gets loud and fast and wild and crazy. And I'll find myself sometimes, and I'm worrying, right? I'm worrying, and I'm even kind of, the self-talk is, right? Tracy, an hour ago, you were just sitting at the computer looking at some recording from New Thought Media Network. You could have been in the car, and why did you wait so long? And you knew you wanted to be there on time, and then worrying about, oh, but I don't even know who the DJ is tonight, and I'm worried the music's not going to be good, and I've driven all this way, and right, what? Shut up. And sometimes I've caught myself doing that just because the human brain, I've left the human brain on its own to explore life, and it's worrying and fussing and complaining and criticizing. I'm like, okay, stop. Don't stop driving, but stop, take a breath. And almost invariably, without me consciously choosing, I take that breath, and what comes into my mind and often out of my mouth if I'm in the car by myself is a very short and simple prayer, right? I know all is well in the universe, and the music will be perfect, because the music that is played at the skating rink always supports my goals for being there, right? Something, anything. And it is true that worry becomes a cure, or that prayer becomes a cure for the human tendency to worry. And the wise philosopher, who you didn't know was a metaphysical philosopher, Satchel Paige, the athlete, said, don't pray when it rains if you don't pray when the sun shines. So while I want to use prayer as the sovereign cure for worry, I don't only want to pray when I am worried or afraid or in despair or troubled in some way. Because a prayer of gratitude for the sun shining, is just as important as the prayer to bring myself back to center when something is happening that I don't love or don't resonate with or don't feel comfortable with. And related is another Corrie ten Boom quote: any concern too small to be turned into a prayer is too small to be made into a burden. Okay, like I could just go to church on this one. Any concern too small to be turned into a prayer is too small to be made into a burden. Mic drop, in my opinion. If I'm going to be concerned about something, then why wouldn't I take that to prayer? That's the piece I think that always confuses me, because when we truly believe in prayer and when we truly believe that prayer works, why would we choose to carry a burden? Why would we choose to create drama and make it a problem? If it's something that I cannot personally change, right, then I am going to pray for my ability to navigate whatever storm goes with this particular situation or circumstance. I'm going to pray for wisdom or strength. I'm going to pray for joy to be which is my nature, my true essential nature. But I'm going to pray that joy is what I experience. I'm not going to carry the burden as if I myself can fix it, make it go away, any of those things. And if it is a situation or scenario where I am able to impact a difference, then I am praying in the context of creating and manifesting wholeness, or creating and manifesting harmony, creating and manifesting unity, or whatever it is that is needed. So this for me brings up something that I have to remind myself of often, and maybe it's helpful for you as well. When we are praying, no matter what prayer process or steps you have been trained to use in prayer, when we are having the experience of praying, it's so important to understand what we are really doing, right? If we are not begging and beseeching and saying, to some character that we have created in our imagination that's outside of us, if we're not saying, hey, please be nice to me, I've been good, it's like you do that with Santa Claus, right? At the end of the year, the culture has created a character called Santa Claus that if you've been good, Santa Claus will bring you what you've asked for. Prayer is about, I am in alignment with that which has created me and created me for good and created good for me. And I am cooperatively working with the way spiritual law works, knowing and believing that my life is constantly expanding and evolving in the direction that I am pointing the energy, or in the direction that I am focused upon. And so when I really remember that, I can't only pray when something is wrong, right? The earlier quotation about prayer is a two-way communication. It's a constant communication. Think about the people you know and care about the most. Do you only talk to them or text them when there's a problem because you want them to come to your rescue and fix it or make it go away? Probably not. The people you most care about, people you are most connected to, you talk to them all the time. You let them know what's going on in your life, and you're curious about their lives and how those are interacting or interconnected. Why would it be any different with God? I'm just taking a breath because I really want you to think about that. I really want you to think about how you engage in this relationship with God. Now, it's a little tricky because God is not just like a person, like a superhuman being. Like, God is so much more than that. But when you think about relationship, what is it that you give into the relationships that are important to you? It's not just about what can you do for me or what can I do for you. It is about sharing the experience within whatever boundaries or guidelines you've established together. And if you think about that, right, your relationship with the divine is that spirit or the universe or God has no boundaries. There is no circumference to God. And so the relationship you're building, you're the only one who is putting boundaries around it. So if you are the person who only prays in your distress and when you need something, Khalil Gibran reminds us that it is probably even more important that we also pray in the fullness of joy and in those days where there is abundance. Another quote that reminds me of this and reminds me to do this is this one from Oswald Chambers. We tend to use prayer as a last resort, but God wants it to be our first line of defense. We pray when there's nothing else we can do, but God wants us to pray all the time. All the time. Do those quotes resonate with you? I'm sharing these quotations because they are the ones that I go to periodically to refresh my commitment to prayer. These quotes and others like them remind me that prayer is and can be an integral part of how I go through my day. And this program on the New Thought Media Network is really all about applying spiritual practice. Applying spiritual practice that helps us live the kinds of lives that we most want to live. And for me, this integration of prayer in the course of the day can happen in so many different ways. Many people I know wake up in the morning and they use prayer and affirmations first thing in the morning. And sometimes I do that. My tendency is to pray throughout the day, informally or just kind of integrated into what I'm doing. And in the morning, first thing in the morning, I'm usually doing journaling and maybe reading a devotional or prayer or poems from a spiritually guided poet. But journaling, kind of setting the tone for the day that way. I pray throughout the day, and then at night, I have a very structured nightly prayer practice where I really anchor in what I want to experience the next day and in my life in general. And then in addition to that, because I am a spiritual coach and have clients, and because I am a practitioner with my local spiritual community, I often will have prayer requests from other people in the community. And so for me at night, I'd really spend some dedicated time doing those prayers for myself and for others. And it's, for me, that has worked. Some people say prayer gets them too revved up at night to do that kind of intensity. But for some reason, for me, it just grounds me. So when I'm done with that, I feel in such communion with wholeness, holiness, with the nature of oneness, that God and I are one, are inseparable, because it is the God in me that is expressing the unity, the oneness, the wholeness, the harmony, all of that. It's like it's so strong for me that it actually relaxes me. And I really hadn't thought about this before. It just hit me as I was saying that. It relaxes me because all of the human craziness, right? All of the human emotion, reaction, um, anything that was going on in the day that was a little off. I've just come back into this place where life is good and all is well. And I am so ready to just sleep. And it is in the prayers for myself. It's like, okay, I have set this into motion. And as I sleep, my subconscious is taking it in. Like I don't go to bed worried about anything or being concerned about what's happening in my life or in the world. So if you've been under the impression that you must use prayer first thing in the morning, do that if it works for you. But I'm giving you permission to try it at different points of the day. I'll tell you for a while, for about a year when I was in my 20s, not true. I was still in my late teens. I was in college and I was dating someone who was a practicing Muslim, and I got really interested in Islam. I didn't know very much about Islam at that time, and it sparked my interest. And so I studied, right? I researched and I studied and began to learn a lot. And while I was never at the point where I thought that would be my primary spiritual path, the one thing that I loved, I mean, absolutely loved about Islam is the ritual of praying 5 times a day. And even after I was no longer dating that person, and even after I really stopped researching, I integrated prayer multiple times a day into my personal spiritual practice. And it was really about recognizing the devotion and the importance of this communication that reminded me. It wasn't because, oh, God won't like me if I don't pray 5 times a day. It wasn't that at all. It was, oh, every time I pray, I get back on track in my day. I come back to center. I am not as aggravated by all the things that people do and say. I love who I am when I am remembering whose I am, what I am, how I can be in the world. And that's what prayer does for me. And I hope that some of these quotes and some of these ideas just remind you of how you can use prayer as your anchor. Or if we go back to the Carrie Ten Boom post, that you can use prayer as your steering wheel and not your spare tire. If you want to put in the comments some examples of ways that you use prayer, or if any of these quotes really like grabbed you, let me know that as well. And then please join me on a future poetry, prayer, and practice. You can find me here every Tuesday at 12 noon Mountain Time. And we will be talking about and sharing and having conversations with people about poetry, prayer, and practice. What I wish for you is that you make really meaningful memories and create very strong anchors in your life by using spiritual practice. My name is Tracy Brown. This is Poetry, Prayer, and Practice on the New Thought Media Network. Please know that you can find out more about prayer and spiritual practices at the many shows on the network. I highly encourage you to check out the daily schedule and to find 4 or 5 programs that really resonate with you. And I also encourage you to please donate to the network, because we are only able to be here through your support. Have a great week, everybody.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week, or watch on demand at www.ntmedia.org or youtube.com/New Thought Media Network. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Learn more at www.ntmedia.org.